All right, good morning, everyone. If you can take your seats, we will begin. We are on lesson number 9 in our books. Lesson number 9. And in our text, we're in Judges chapter 6. Lesson number 9, Judges chapter 6. Lesson number 9, Judges chapter 6. Lesson 9, Judges chapter 6. All right, let's start with just a quick recap of where we are. Israel has already sinned again, so we know that. Deborah is already, we're in a different time period. This chapter is mostly about Gideon. Somebody remind us, who is Gideon again? From verse 11 onwards. Who's Gideon?
The only person left that has like kind of faith.
The only one left that has faith, who's doing the right thing. Yes, from the tribe of Benjamin. So there are some people doing the right thing, but it's very few and far in between, right? So God, an angel appears to him and says that the angel tells him that God is with everybody, or God is with him. God is with him, right? So that's a clear distinction, which we looked at last week on the same concept in Romans, where Paul talks about if God is for us, who can be against us? The point is, if God is for you. The world thinks God is for everybody, right? God is for everyone in terms of Timothy, Paul telling him that God's desire is all men and women be saved. But when you start talking about God fighting for people and God being on your side, God is only on his side. So everyone who's on his side, by default, God is on your side. But God only views life as light and dark. You're either with him or against him. So this is clear here. Okay, so then Gideon wants to make sure that he's not hallucinating and that this is really of God and that he's really getting the right instructions, because the angel tells him that he's going to use Gideon for some great purpose. So he asked God for a sign. What was that initial sign? Verses 21 or so. Verse 20 to 21, the first sign. What did he ask the angel to do? Before that. All right, so there was meat and there was bread on the rock. In verse 21, the angel of the Lord put out the end of the staff that was in his hand, touched the meat and the unleavened bread. The fire rose out of the rock, consumed the meat and unleavened bread, and the meat and the unleavened bread. And the angel of the Lord departed out of his sight, like a sacrifice, right? So that was good. Then Gideon made an altar to God. It came to pass that same night that the Lord said to him, basically what?
Peace. Do not be afraid. You're not going to die.
After that, after he already gave the sacrifice, right? He already proved to him that the angel was of God. The Lord in verse 25 spoke to him and said what? In the nighttime.
Take the second bow from your father's herd, the one 7 years old. Tear down your father's altar to Baal and cut down the Asher's pole beside it.
Okay. And put God's altar where? On top. Okay. So the bull had to be 7 years old. 7 is another time we've seen this number come up in our survey of the Old Testament. So keep in mind of that. He comes to him at night. We talked about last week about spiritual courage and having a plan. Most people just go out and do things and always says God will provide, or the Lord is with me, and all these buzzwords that people use. God is a God of planning, because in Corinthians, when people was just doing whatever they felt because God was with them, God interrupted that through the Holy Spirit and let everyone know that God is not the author of confusion, but of peace. So I don't care how much words people saying. I don't care how many people are baptized or even appear to be doing the right thing. If you go into the midst of any 1-2 Christians or a congregation and see confusion, God is not in the midst of that. Sorry, because God's not the author of confusion. A lot of people bring their confused households into church and want to run church the same way as their house. Instead of coming to church and going back to your house to say, oh, I learned some tools to run my house better. That's how life should work. But most people get upset. Don't tell me how to raise my kids. Don't tell me how to be a wife or a husband and all these things. At the end of the day, all of us can be doing better in our family. So don't bring your family baggage to church. Bring the goodness of church back to your family's baggage to get rid of that baggage, right? Anyone in the room that's a parent, a grandparent, married on any level, a child, your parents are still living, you should be actively every year trying to improve your last name. A lot of us give up on our last name. Oh, the people, they don't want to be saved. They don't want to be bothered, blah, 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 and just throw up our hands. I never believe in that. Because to me, as if you're going to convince strangers, but worry about your last name, not meaning you can make someone be baptized, but what you can do is show the love of Christ to your loved ones. But sometimes that's the hardest thing, right? This boy was asked to do something towards his dad, not, hey, go on the other side of Israel. You have to start at your dad. Let your dad know you are making a different spiritual path, right? Think about in Corinthians when Paul was talking to the women who were getting saved, saying, you got to go back. You can't just be like, oh, I'm saved now, so bye, I'm not going home, right? You got to go back to your husband. Maybe he will be convinced to be saved. This is the same thing. So what happens is Gideon gets the instruction. He takes a group of people that he can trust. He knocks the altar down. He builds the right one. The next day, somebody snitches on him because they said, who did this? What happened? Gideon did it. But what does his dad say? Right. Hey, don't try to grab my son up, because they asked, hey, bring your son out here. He said, why didn't Baal protect him himself if he's supposed to be a god? So we see a change of heart from his dad, which is good news. Okay, now we get to these other instances of the test, right? So now we get some instructions about a battle. It's one thing to make sure that the angel of the Lord talking to you is not a hallucination. It's another thing when God is start talking about battle, because battle means winner and loser. And we're not talking about a basketball game or a soccer match. We're talking about life and death. So now I got to really, really, really make sure that God is really for us, because I know from my own history that when God isn't for Israel and they go to battle, a lot of people on the Israelite side die, right? So what were the examples that he asked God to show him to prove that he was on his side? All right, fleece, right? So let's look at verse around 36, right? So what was the instances? First, he took the fleece and did what with it?
So, question for if there is dew on the fleece only, and it is dry on all the ground, then I shall know that you will save Israel by my hand, as you have said.
All right, so put the fleece out. I'm going to wake up. The fleece going to be wet, but the ground got to be dry, right? Great. Then the next day he said what? Hey,
I'm sorry, I got to ask you.
Right, like, look, I don't mean no harm, right?
I hear you.
Yeah, like that fleece was wet and everything. I'm going to let you finish, but a lot of times I go outside and something wet and something not wet, right? If you drive into Florida, it could be dry and you see the rain coming and then you drive into the rain. So can we do the reverse? Can we make everywhere around wet, but can the fleece be dry, right? Was God upset, or was God say, hey, my faith should be sufficient for you, or did he do it? Right, he did it. Last week we talked about the young person who was at the bottom of the mountain of the transfiguration. Remember the apostles, Jesus came down, the ones that were down there, people were arguing with them. Hey, what happened? Hey, these guys you got can't do the same miracles as you. What's going on? These things only happen through faith and through fasting and prayer, was Jesus's response, talking about faith. And then there was a person that said, Lord, I believe, help me with my unbelief. Right? Like, help me with the things that I'm struggling with. Yes, I believe that you are really talking to me last night. We did the altar thing. I'm still alive. Nobody killed me. We're moving on the right track from my household out and my community, and we're going. That's great. But I am not a warrior. I'm not a king. I'm not a judge. I'm not any of these things. So this is our first kind of interaction, right? Like, it's not like I've had this cachet of interaction or faith building or relationship with you as God, right? So therefore, can I ask some favors to prove to me that you are who you say you are, but you are that for me, right? I already know you're the God of Abraham, Isaac. I'm looking to see if you're the God of Gideon, right? So he's trying to establish a personal relationship with God through signs and wonders, right? So he asks about the fleece. God appreciates that, and he does it. And in verse 40, God did so that night. It was dry on the fleece only, but there was dew on all the ground. All right, any comments before we move to chapter 7? All right, somebody read for us verse 1 through 8 of chapter 7. What does that say?
Then Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, and all the people who were with him rose early and camped beside the spring of Harod. And the camp of Midian was on the north side of them, by the hill of Moreh in the valley. The Lord said to Gideon, the people who are with you are too many for me to give Midian into their hands. For Israel would become boastful, saying, my own power has delivered me. Now therefore, come proclaim in the hearing of the people, saying, whoever is afraid and trembling, let him return and depart from Mount Gilead. So 22,000 people returned, but 10,000 remained. And the Lord said to Gideon, the people are still too many. Bring them down to the water, and I will test them for you there. Therefore it shall be that he of whom I say to you, this one shall go with you, he shall go with you. But everyone of whom I say to you, this one shall not go with you, he shall not go. So he brought the people down to the water, and the Lord said to Gideon, you shall separate everyone who laps the water with his tongue as a dog laps, as well as everyone who kneels to drink. Now the number of those who lapped put in their hand to their mouth was 300 men, but all the rest of the people kneeled to drink water. The Lord said to Gideon, I will deliver you with 300 men who lapped, and will give the Midianites into your hands. So let all the other people go, each man to his home. So the 300 men took the people's provisions and their trumpets into their hands. And Gideon sent all the other men of Israel, each to his tent, but retained the 300 men in the camp of Midian, with below him in the valley.
All right, let's see what we have here. Who's Jerubbaal?
Gideon.
All right.
They give him after he destroyed.
Right, that's his nickname. That's his street name now, right? So now when you go out into battle, you need a new name, because Gideon probably a nice kid and something no one gonna know. Oh, here comes Gideon. No, that don't put any fear in anybody's heart. When they hear a new name, they think, oh goodness, right? Somebody new on the street. Who is this person, right? So he have a new name because back in verse 32, he was the one who was doing what God asked, and his point was, on that day, call him Jerubbaal, because let God plead against him because he has torn down his altar. All right. Baal, plead against him. Thank you. Now, when we get to verse 1 of this, a lot of people show up. Why is it a big deal about how many people show up between verses 1 and 2? Because now, of course, a lot of people are going to show up because this great thing happened, right? He knocked his altar down. Nothing happened to him. He's telling people that God spoke to him, told him to do it. If it looks like God is on his side, right? Baal didn't do anything. God did something. Fleece was wet. Fleece was dry. So if you start talking about battle, people are rejuvenated. Therefore, a lot of people show up to fight. What's the big deal? Why did God have something to say about this?
It's too many people, so he wants it to look more like a miracle with less people.
They would boast and say that it was done.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So they'll say, hey, we were so charged up. A group of us came out and man, y'all should have seen us. We ran down there and we was just causing havoc, blah, blah, blah. Right. So God was like, no. So he told Gideon, verse 2, people who are with you are too many for me to give to the Midianites into your hands, lest Israel claim glory for itself. Verse 3, now therefore proclaim the hearing of the people, saying, whoever is fearful and afraid, let him turn and depart at once. How many people say, oh, that's my stop? All right. So, okay, like I was charged up. This happens all the time, right? You excited or something, somebody saying, man, this person jumped me. We got to get them. You thinking, yeah, man, we got to make sure. And then all of a sudden you think, man, I've been hit in the face before. I don't want to get in the face, right? Like, you know, hey, my mom's calling. I got homework. I'm hungry. I got to pick up my sister. And then they run, right? So God, instead of waiting for battle to happen, for people to be scared, he weaned them out in the beginning. The other thing is when you're talking about a military combat, those who are fearful and who break the line are the ones who can cause the most damage to the group. So you need to get them off the battlefield first and foremost, quick, fast, right? Because this is just detrimental to fighting. So that's what happens. Verse 4, verse 3, 22,000 of the people returned, 10,000 remain. All right, 10,000 sound like a good number. Then what happened? Still too many. What was the way to wean out the next group? Now the people who stayed are all brave. So now what? All right, go to the water and then what?
Those that will laugh, and you'll have some that will laugh and some that will kneel down.
All right, so think of a visual, right? Verse 5, everyone who laps from the water with his tongue as a dog laps, he shall set apart by himself. Likewise, everyone who gets down on his knees to drink, right? Everybody who bows down to the river and drink like this, right, is separated from everyone who go down and drink it like this. Now, let's just think logically, right? What's up with the people who are drinking like this? Right? Anybody have a puppy here? When they put their face, they design the bowl, right, to fit their nose in there, right? And the puppy is like this. Right now, we go into battle. Sometimes in battle, you may not get any water. I love watch this thing on the snipers who are in Afghanistan. They have a couple packs of food and stuff because they have to hold their position. Sometimes fly crawling across their eye. They have to hold their position. Now, some of us, I'm thirsty because we complain here. When it's potluck, hey, is the chicken ready? I'm hungry. There's no chicken coming for you. So you this way, you thirsty, right? You're not worrying about any battle, anything, because it's all about you. Some of us are that way. We off the field. Some of us, y'all know, oh, I'm hungry. I can't go a couple hours without eating. I'm not that person. So y'all off the field. Some of y'all that, well, I have a medical condition. I've never seen records. I have a medical condition. I have to eat every whatever many hours. You off the field. Right? Because sometimes life is that way. That's why I always pray all the time that people who are that way, I pray you never fall on hard times, truly. Because sometimes when hard times, you don't have no food. If you homeless, I'm homeless. Every few hours I got to eat. People look at you like you crazy. Like, so some of us, we have our needs, right? Pray, always do what God asks you to do. That way God always bless you, right? But you off the field, if you so thirsty, you do it like this, right? Because you thinking about your physical sustenance. Now, the other people that's drinking like this doing what? Right? They getting less water, but they alert because it's better that I be alert with my life and less water than I get all the water I need and my head get cut off and floating in the pool. Right? So I'm getting less, but I'm alert, right? So I'm looking around. So God separates. Now, with that separation, how much we have? 300. All right, 300 is on which side? The lapping or the scooping up? All right. We went from a lot of people to 10,000 to 300. Again, numbers matter. We don't have time to dive into these things in terms of numerics, right? But numbers matter, being divisions of 10 and all these sort of things, 7 with the bull. Again, those are more higher level Bible study that we don't have time for. But those are the things that I like diving into because those things matter. So he comes down to a number of 300. And now this looked like military suicide. Now, of those 300, yes, they're the bravest. And yes, they're the most alert, right? But a lot of people are dead and gone who were brave and alert, right? Because they just went against a bigger force. Up to verse 2. Somebody reread verse 2 and tell me what God originally said.
The Lord said to me, you have too many men. I cannot deliver you in the area. For Israel will boast against me. My own strength has saved me.
Oh, so he said Midian would be delivered by what method? No, that's what they would think. But God was saying initially is how would they get Midian? He would deliver them, right? God's point was, I'm already going to give a win, and the win is already done because I live outside of time. I'm speaking to you in the construct of time. This is things that we miss in terms of Bible study. God is outside of time. God is verbally speaking to Gideon, and his voice is inside of time because that's where Gideon is. So therefore, to God, this makes perfect sense because I'm already outside of time. I already know how many people are going to be scared, how many people are going to laugh, and how many people are going to stay. And I already know we're going to win, but you don't know that. So therefore, you have to trust me enough that I know what I'm talking about, that you'll do these steps. And when you see only 300 people, your faith cannot waver because remember, I'm telling you something that you have not seen or experienced yet. Okay, let's come into the New Testament. Jesus tells his disciples and to us, bad things going to happen to everybody. Be of good cheer. I overcame this world. I'm going to prepare a place for you. If it wasn't so, I would have told you. But when I'm gone, if you seek first the kingdom and all its righteousness, then all these other physical things that you struggle with, my Father will give to you anyway. He's telling you that inside of time. But because he is from outside of time, he's telling you those things as a spiritual surety. Like a teacher telling you, hey, before I even teach you about the fundamentals of math, here go 2 apples. You thinking, what's the big deal about 2 apples? Then she's showing you 1 apple and 1 apple equals 2 apples. God give you the answer first because he needs you to understand, according to Hebrews, in order to believe him, first, you have to believe that he is who he says he is. But I don't know who you are. So and when we first meet, you got to give me something about yourself that will set you apart from Baal. So therefore, I'm going to tell you the end of the story before it happens. That way, when it happens, you'll be like, oh, God, you smart because you told me already. I should have known that. Now, we in this time period, we understand that. But what happens? Time goes by. So when you continue to live in time, after a while, you look at your watch and you say, man, I thought God said he was going to show up. It's like a long movie, 3-hour movie. And I tell you the ending, right? Or a good part. And you waiting hour, hour and a half, 2 hours. You thinking, where's the part Ellis said? Maybe he told me about another movie. People give up on God because they think he's slack according to his promises. But remember, God's promises are coming from outside of time. Hard to understand because nothing in your existence is outside of time. There's nowhere you can go in your mind's eye to think about what it's like not to be in time. How? Everything around you is in time. But imagine if you knew everything that was going to happen today. And in the morning, you told somebody this is going to happen, this can happen, this can happen, but you didn't tell them what time it was going to happen. Maybe some of those things wouldn't happen until 11:50 p.m. But after a few hours, the person's going to think, what? Oh, this Ellis don't know what he's talking about because whatever he said hasn't happened yet. Go back to Adam and Eve, right? When Eve bit, did she physically drop dead? No. So let me have some. Did I die? No. Only thing happened, I seen we was naked, so I put some clothes together. And what's the big deal? And even when God came, well, hey, where y'all at? No one died yet still. Even after when they got kicked out of the garden, no one died because they lived about 900 years. But see what I'm saying is it was not immediate, right? That is our problem. It's because we don't trust or have faith outside of time. Right? The boy who was saying, Lord, I believe, help me with my unbelief is because of time. Your faith has to be rooted outside of time. And I know that's very hard. And I think as a brotherhood, we do a poor job of talking about time because God is not in time. Therefore, if he promising you something of eternity, which exists outside of time, you have to set your mind outside of time. You might be in a bad way for 30 years, but what is 30 years? If you live to be 60, what's 30 years? Only half of your life. You know how many millionaires who think, oh, I didn't become famous or celebrity or have money till I was 40, 50 years old. Let's say they live to 100. First 50 years, you were poor, destitute. The next 50, you was able to globetrot all over the world. What is that first 50 years to you? Right? What is time? But when you're starting something, time is a big deal. When you get through and you look the other way, how do you feel? Oh, that feel like yesterday, right? When you reflect. But the problem is the process. That's where God lose a lot of people in the process, right? In the beginning, he have them. Parable of the sower, people sprout up. In the end, he'll have them because everybody, when Jesus come back, will say, oh, man, that's Jesus. I should have did the right thing. Knee gonna bow, tongue will confess. God's point is I'm looking for you in the middle, though, right? Because I'm already Alpha and Omega. I'm already the beginning and the end. I'm all set on that. I'm looking for people to stay in the middle. The middle of the process is where people lost because time, right? Time is against people because we don't view time the right way. When you look at time, how it is as a limiting construct, and you are not bound to time, you able to excel in this world. But when you live your life bound to a clock, you can never be great. The most you ever going to be able to achieve is good, because you're always going to be, your faith is going to be relying on what you see. But God is not physically here anymore. See, so you got to believe in spiritual. Spiritual is not contained in time, right? Because spiritual things take time, because God is weaving so many lives together. That take time. Let's say you sprout up and you do good quick. Praise God. Maybe 30 other people God is going to bind with you in your walk. It takes them a long time. Therefore, God is saying, great, you remain faithful while I work on these 30. But what happens if when the 30 are ready, you said, I was waiting for a long time and you never showed up, so I bounced? Then where would it be? Oh, we lost one. That's the whole point of when the bridegroom comes, they didn't know when he was coming. If I knew when he was coming, why would I get all dressed up, hair and makeup done, waiting all day? Well, I'll come out 5 minutes before you get there. Everybody know that. The problem is I don't know when he's coming, right? So Jesus was saying, even I don't know when I'm coming. Therefore, I don't give any answers for you except for always be ready. Because if you stay ready, you don't have to get ready. Well, somebody say, hey, we going out tonight at 7. Okay. Blowing the horn at 6:59. Oh, you should have called me when you're on the way. No. Because we already said we going out at 7. Why I got to call you when I'm on the way? People always do that. Then they say, oh, give me 5 minutes. No, 5 minutes is done. People think plane's going to wait for them. They think the movie's going to wait for them. Then when you get there, I don't know why movies start at 6:20 anyway. That's an off time. So now it's the movie industry problem that it start at 6:20. Oh, I don't know why planes leave. The plane's still outside. I don't know why I wouldn't let. No, because time is that way. If you got to be ready. So God's point is, you don't know how much life you have in this world. You don't know when someone will exercise their free will to take your life. You don't know that. And you don't know when Jesus is coming back. Therefore, you have to stay ready. This is talking about that in the same way in terms of faith. You got to have that faith, that level of faith that God has already done something for you in the beginning. Now, is that possible first? No, right? You got to build your relationship with God. It takes time. That's why faith is a time process of keep building your faith. But after a while, you have to transition. And this is where God loses a lot of Christians just at good, who don't go to great, right? You've been baptized a long time. Everybody in here who's been baptized, let's say more than 5 years, 10 years, you should be striving to be great. None of you should be telling me anything about basic good things that someone last night was baptized. No one 10 years should be telling me about how many times they go to church, how many Wednesday nights they go to, how much money. That's basic. That's basic stuff. Nobody married 10 years should be telling me, oh, but I never forget anniversary. I never forget birthday. That's basic stuff. You remember those things when you first met somebody, not 10 years of a relationship. 10 years of a relationship with somebody, you need to start telling me high level things about that person, not their favorite color. Right? I should be able to blindfold you, and you should be able to sense when your spouse come in the room. 10 years living next to somebody, but you still telling me, oh, their favorite color is yellow. Wrong, pink. Oh, well, yellowish pink. No. Right? Because you just staying at a relationship that's only good. You need to be transitioning to great. So at great level is high level Christianity. That's a lot of what Paul be talking about. But you got to be not conformed to this world, but transform with the renewing of your mind. Romans 12:1-2. But like I said, for the last several weeks, in the last 7 days, how much time have you taken yourself to renew your mind? Let me answer, very little. Now, you did a lot in the last 7 days for physical things. Work, shower, clothe, ate, drank, slept, had fun. Those are great. But that's just good. We talking about going to the great level. How much time in minutes did you spend getting your mind to go to the next level? Sunday worship don't count because that's in a remembering and worshiping phase. Bible study don't count. Bible study is learning those tools, right? Like practice in a sports game. But then you got to go apply them. If you just having practice with no application, you never be a great player. That's the difference. The great players practice outside of practice. The good players say, oh, we didn't have practice today. Well, that's why you only ever will be a good player. A great player say, I practice 24/7. And even when the season is over, all the good players go on vacation. Where do the great players be? No, vacation, I still got, sorry. This period of my life, there is no vacation because I want to be a great player, constantly refining your craft. That's where we need to grow towards, right? So when you're thinking of it that way, this lesson here is more in the great faith category, because how in the world will we win with 300 people? And why would I even go through this exercise to begin with, whittling down people? Why are we getting less people on the battlefield when everybody knows the more the merrier? I could have sent 10,000 out in front to distract and then sent the 300 real fighters to take over. But God said, no, because you're thinking about things from a physical standpoint in terms of what you know. But my thoughts aren't your thoughts. And my ways aren't your ways. Plus, I know what you don't know. I already know we're going to win and how we're going to win. So therefore, I want you to live smarter, not harder. So when God come out and say, don't do certain things, we say, I like doing that. I'm going to do it anyway. So God lets you do it. And then you keep doing it. And then bad things start happening as a domino effect all in your life. And then you build up this rapport with bad. Then you try to mix bad and good, and it's a war, Paul said. A war in your mind in Romans. Then you come to the realization, oh, I've been doing the wrong thing. I was on the wrong path. Sometimes that wrong path, it takes a lifetime to come to that realization. And God is saying that whole time you are living harder, not smarter, because you thought when I said don't do something, it was about infringing on your fun, your free will, and all these things. But what does it gain if you go all the way this way, do all this heartache, pain, just to come back to do what I asked you to do in the first place? Think of Samson. What was the point of that? What was the point of losing your life when you still the same thing God promised his parents that boy would do? He did. The problem is his path was way harder than smarter, right? That's the difference. Why would we go through the rigmarole of losing thousands of lives when I'm telling you we only need 300? You're going to tell me, no, we need more. That's the difference, right? If we trust and obey, if we walk in faith, not by sight, then we can be great in this world. But when we constantly struggle with that concept, I'm telling you, the most you're going to be able to achieve is good. And that's at best, because God said first, you got to believe that he is who he says he is. And he's a rewarder of those who diligently seek him, not just whenever they get a chance. The people who are always trying to look for God, he rewards those people. So this lesson in its entirety, because remember, this whole concept we're looking at is obedience, right? That's how we wanted to look at this lessons today. When you learn this in Sunday school, and even different people have preached this, there's a lot of ways to look at it, but think about the construct of the lesson we're looking at. Everything was about obedience, and obedience is rooted in faith. Yes.
Sometimes stories don't apply to me because they're my grandparents' stories. I'm living off the blessings that my grandparents were obedient to. So I really can't connect. So when things start happening to me, culturally, things start happening to me in my own time frame, I forget about the importance of those stories and those teachings. I have to live now in the present, and I'm going to do some dumb stuff to get me to see. God is going to allow it to get me to see that it's the same old story. Like you said, the compass, the GPS. Samson was told, his parents, the angel told his parents, and his parents told him. He still didn't connect because he had the talent. He toyed around with people. His blessing became his curse. But unfortunately, he didn't realize his death will glorify God. It's just that his life did.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's a good point. Look at 2 Corinthians 12. 2 Corinthians 12. Somebody read 7 through 10. 2 Corinthians 12, 7 through 10. And look at a New Testament passage to bring that point home. Right? Yeah, I heard about the healings you do for other people. I even healed some other people. Right? But now I need my own testimony. Right? That's Paul. Go ahead.
At least I should be exalted above measure by the abundance of the revelations. A thorn in the flesh was given to me, a messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I be exalted above measure. Concerning this thing, I pleaded with the Lord 3 times that it might depart from me. And he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, most gladly, I would rather boast in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore, I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in needs, and persecution, and distresses for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong.
All right, this we read a lot, right? Even in the denomination world, even secular world, know a variation of the quote of the last verse. But this is high level Christianity, right? When we read this, we be reading just basic level. This is high level. How many times he asked? 3 times. What's the big deal of 3? How many days Jesus was gone physically for? 3. How many times Peter betrayed him? 3, right? So this is a big deal. Now, how many times it took for other people to get healed by the apostles? 1, right? They just come and apostles healed. Jesus walked through, it says some towns, he healed everybody. So imagine if the people had been asking a lot of times and didn't get a result. We don't have to imagine, because we talked about that. When Jesus came down from the mountain and went to the base, the people said what? Did they believe? No, they said, hey, man, we was waiting for you, because these guys you got, we keep asking, they can't do nothing. They keep trying. I don't know what they doing. They sweating, they veins popping out their head, but no power is coming out. So we don't believe. But imagine being able to heal other people. Just think about this for a second. And you wake up one day and you say, oh, I need a healing. This about to be my best healing, because I'm healing other people. But you know what? And nothing happens. So you thinking, oh, man, maybe when you sleep on your hand fall asleep, baby caught thinking, ooh, tingling. Let me wait for the tingling to go in. Okay. What's up? Nothing happened. So you thinking, oh, maybe because, when we be healing people, we say, oh, in the name of Jesus, come out of them. And the demons come out. Everyone say, oh. So I go to Jesus. Hey, can you help me? No. Oh, probably doing something else. Can you help me? No. Can you help me? No. 3rd time now I'm thinking, what? Come on, man. You playing it, because what's up? But Paul's point was, what in the first 2 verses? Where if this thing was taken away, how would he feel? What did he say in verse 7? I love New King James Version, exalted above measure. Now, I know a lot of y'all are holier than thou, so you can't understand this, but I can. Imagine yourself being exalted above measure. You know what that means? Couldn't nobody tell Paul anything. And when I read that, I think, oh, I could say, because if I could heal myself, y'all couldn't tell me nothing. I would look at y'all just smiling. When they see Moses and Moses' face, they say, you glowing. I would be glowing every Sunday, because I would think, what could somebody do to me? I'd be walking through the hardest parts of the streets thinking, they like, what you smiling? You not from here. Like, nobody tell me nothing. Because if somebody touch me, I'll show y'all something that y'all never see. Because it's one thing to heal somebody else, but I'm about to self-heal myself like Wolverine. So I will be exalted above measure. My mind will be in the 7th heaven somewhere. Nobody ever get me back to the ground. Right? So he was honest with himself. He tell you that in the beginning. So then he tells you, yes, I asked it 3 times. God said, no, no, no. And then what in verse 9? What was the reason why? My strength is made perfect in your weakness. Okay. Therefore, most gladly, I will rather boast in my infirmities than the power of Christ may rest upon me. Now we're confused, because when you are exalted above measure, if you can heal yourself, other people would exalt you too. Because if I did something to you and you self-heal, the same where you was, I'll push you even further and your head would get even bigger. But if you come down the street talking, smiling, same scenario, and I hit you and you start bleeding like I bleed and you start laughing, now I'm going to think you what? Crazy. So I don't exalt you. I demote you to think you're a crazy person. I'm going to stop hitting you because I'm going to say this person is crazy. But that's what he's saying. He's going to boast in his infirmities. Why? In verse 10. Somebody reread 10.
Therefore I take pleasure in infirmities and reproaches and needs and persecution for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, I am strong.
Okay, that make no sense to the world, right? When I'm weak, I'm strong. No, you not. You weak. Right? That's like saying when I'm broke, you rich. No, you broke. Right? You know, riches is physical things and money is just paper. No, people with money, when they be hearing that, you know what they thinking? You broke, aren't you? When you go around rich people saying money isn't everything, you know, happiness, and rich people be looking like, let me guess, you have no money. Correct? Because if you had some money, you won't be saying what you saying. Because when I'm upset, I got some money, I go to the store. You telling me about praying and all. Rich people disconnect, right? That's why Jesus himself said, what? It's kind of hard to the rich people. Because like what y'all be saying, they're thinking like, what you talking about? I have that now. You talk about a future time. Like I want my future now. So it's a disconnect. So if you say when I'm weak, I'm strong, somebody help me understand that. Because to the world, that don't make sense. So we can't just read that and breeze through. That's like when we be telling people, oh, let go and let God. If people, well, you know what they think when you say that? Then we're going to crash. What are you talking about? Let go of what? And where is God? Oh, let Jesus take the wheel. Well, that's a good hashtag. But if I let go of my wheel, I'm going to meet Jesus. So there's a disconnect. We got to be able to explain those principles so that somebody could understand, oh, that's what you mean. So if I hit you and you start praising God, I'm going to think you crazy. And if you say I'm weak, therefore I'm strong, they're going to think you crazy. So what is Paul talking about on high level? Yes.
You know something? That's Saul's personality, and Jesus knew that. If you look at Paul before Saul, when Paul was Saul, you see the arrogance in him. If God would allow him to heal himself, that old man would have came out, and all that Saul was would have crept out. And to keep him humble, he had to keep him abased in that aspect, because Paul would have took him to another level, because that's his personality.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and then you got to be honest with your personality. So that's a good point. What does this mean? When I'm weak, therefore I'm strong.
Because when you're physically, well, it doesn't matter in what state, physically, mentally, emotionally, whatever, you have to rely on God. The reliance comes from someone greater than you.
Okay.
It's God. So Paul knew that, because if he could do all things for himself, then he wouldn't rely on God so much. Therefore, he would not be as strong spiritually as he could potentially be relying on God.
Right. So let's look back at Judges 7, right? Verse 3, 22,000 people returned, 10,000 remain. Right? That's a lot of people. 300, skip to the end that we know in verse 8, is what God used. So that's a weaker number. But God is trying to convince them they'll be stronger in the fight with less people. How? How can I believe that? Because that don't make sense. Remember, God already telling you in advance, he don't make sense to human beings. He told you that through Isaiah, that my ways and my thoughts aren't yours. That's why we can't be confused when people come and hear and don't believe, because it doesn't make sense. You've been coming long time. That's why it makes sense to you by faith. But can you explain it to somebody else so it can make sense? That's like you sitting in class and every day your parents ask you, how's school going? You say good. Then you fail the test. But it was the same stuff in class. Ain't like the teacher brought new stuff because you thought you understood. That's like when you go through hard times and your faith waver, same person, same God. You thought you was walking by faith, not by sight, until it's time to put that into practice. That's what I'm saying. We breeze through this verse. A lot of people like this verse from Paul. But when people fully understand it, I don't think most people are going to like it. Because what he's saying is, even when you don't have, you might be destitute. Think about Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, where they said, God will save us. But even if he doesn't, that's where people, are you that bold? Where if you lost everything, would you still praise God? Or will you say, oh, God not for me anymore? See, if you able, you say, man, I do for everybody. I gave for everybody. Now, the one time I need some money, nobody there for me. I thought the scriptures talk about God will always make a way for you to always be abound, to give to other people. Now I need something and nobody there for me. I wasted all that time and money giving out money to other people. Nobody there for me when I need it. See? Or you going to say, my grace is sufficient for you. That's very, 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 very hard. Because the odds are not in your favor, right? 300 people not the same as tens of thousands of people. So how can I fully believe in that? Paul's concept is, if you can buy into the concept of where your strength comes from, therefore it won't matter if you're well or unwell, rich or poor, right? Because I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me. That's another passage that's misunderstood. People like the last verse, but remember, he was talking about a lot of bad things for the sentence right before that. He was talking about having, not having, shipwreck, being well, being sick, all these things. And he understood that through it all, good times or bad, knowing that his strength comes from Christ, that's how he can do all things. We be saying it as, oh, God is for me, so I can do all things. No, that's not what he's saying. Not that way. He's saying that even when you fail, if you put your mind to the test that, hey, God must have wanted me to fail for some reason, and he's still God, he's still for me, my strength comes from him. Now you know that through the failure, you can get through the failure. But see, you thinking I can do all things through Christ who strengthens means I never fail. No, that's not what that means. That means good times, God is there. But in the bad times, you can get through the bad time because you can do all things through Christ that strengthens you. Not physical strength, not financial strength, not emotional strength. Strength from the true source of power. That's what that means. Oh, that's what that means? I'm not with that verse no more, because I thought it meant if I be a good enough Christian, I do all things. I get all the raises, all the jobs. I don't got to study for tests. I still get good. Marriage good. Kids good. Life is good. Nope. Jesus said bad things going to happen in this world, but be of good cheer. I already overcame this place. That's the mindset that Paul is saying that ties in directly to Gideon. Yes, I think somebody had their hand up.
Yes, I think we get too caught up with the spirit, with the physical life. We get caught up with the things that we want. We get caught up with our jobs, with our money, with where we live, the car we drive, the clothes we wear. We get so caught up with it that we completely forget that when it comes to God, God doesn't care about the physical. You know, it's for God, everything is all about spirituality. But because we are in the flesh and we're humans, we still think that it's okay, but it really isn't. And when you fully understand your purpose, when it comes to spiritual things, when it comes to serving God, then you realize that all those other things don't mean anything.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you've seen people's house burnt down and they said they wish they were there. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm so happy you weren't there, so you were alive. You know,
yeah, but they don't think of it that way.
You know, or I just read on Facebook recently, one of our friends, which I'm going to have to talk to her, her mother died. And she was basically blaming God. How could you do this to me? And I'm like, well, what do people think about? I mean, we're here in the physical for only a short time,
mm-hmm.
right? That was guaranteed. From the time we were born, there was a date written down that we're going to die, whether we like it or not. You know, so what I'm saying is that we tend to forget all of these little things. And the only times we remember it is when we're physically touched. So if we get physically ill, oh, we remember them. Or if somebody dies for us, oh yes, remember that we're just frail human beings. You know, I mean, I'm sure everybody has read the whole Steve Jobs last interview. I'm sure everybody has read it by now. You know, the things that he said after, you know, when he was dying, when he couldn't control it, when his money couldn't do anything. Mm-hmm. And we're not saying, and I think we need to remember also, we're not saying that it shouldn't be ambitious. We're not saying it shouldn't get the fancy everything in life. Of course, you deserve it. Why not? Mm-hmm. If it makes your life easy. But you just, we need to remember that we need to separate it. When it comes to God, physical things have nothing to do with anything. It's all spiritual. We need to just remember, because I think we forget it all the time.
Yeah.
Every single thing.
And it's easy to forget, right? Because everywhere around you is physical, right? Where are you going to go where it's only spiritual or outside of time or those sort of things? So yeah, that's a good point, is to always put things in its proper perspective, right? Physical things are good. Jesus says, seek first, though, the kingdom. That's why I like Sunday, the start of the week, right? Start your week off the right way. Because if you started off physical, it's only downhill from there, right? But you at least, God set up where you can start your week spiritually the right way. but you got to take advantage of that. All right, we're out of time now. Think about these things this week. Next week, we're going to get into the assurance of the victory and close out chapter 8. So we'll look at the second half of this story. Again, when you're reading chapter 8 and the second half of 7, think in the mindset of obedience, following God's law specifically, and then we'll close out chapter 8 and then move into the next week afterwards for the next lesson. All right, let's have a word of prayer. We'll transition to worship. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this beautiful and blessed day. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to study a portion of your word. We ask for continued blessings and guidance for the strength to follow your word and be obedience to you. We thank you for this story of Gideon and understanding that when we are weak, then we are made strong, because we can do all things through you as our source who strengthens us. We thank you for Christ. We ask, dear Heavenly Father, at this time that you bless those traveling without the loss or harm of any as we transition into worship service. And most importantly, we pray that our worship service be a sweet smelling aroma to thy throne room, presented to you and conducted in spirit and in truth. And it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. Thank you for all of our Bible readers and all those who had comments. Much appreciated.